results were that 36 people actually responded. This is not including the people who made the phone calls. So that adds to it. Of the 36, 30 had used the Catalyst program. 30 were satisfied. And the last question that was yes, no, was would your child attend SEED if there were no Catalyst program, or would the student attend SEED? And 12 would, 11 wouldn't, and 7 didn't know. Then there was sort of, the other two questions were, what does the Catalyst program add to SEED, and what questions would you like to ask our principal? So that was the work we did to try and involve the rest of the SEED community, apart from the people who were there last Wednesday. And the fact that so many people have come today, I think, is an incredible response. And really, the question is, how do we want to pursue? I don't know if copies of this so that some people could see it, because rather than me reading it out, the numbers are easy to digest. But
speak louder while this happens.
Yeah. So the principal and superintendent are coming, and the first question that's on the list is, why is the program under review? I imagine that everybody wants to know that.
Or maybe it should be, how are you going to save this? Because we don't really want to know why it's under review. We know it doesn't fit within the boundaries of the ministry and the board and all that. So maybe it's sort of we think it's important, so how...
I don't know, you do, but some people who came here first for the first time today might not. There are a lot of parents that I spoke to wanted to know that.
Wasn't our approach sort of put it
Or they could be right behind.
This is your job to maintain and to make growth.
The idea was to get him on side.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that anyone wanted to give him the ball.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because if he does that, then we'd have no control at all. Not that we necessarily do anyway. But,
Can you give me a little bit of background? Was the Catalyst program part of SEED originally? Has it always been part of its sort of...
Since the first summer.
Before teachers were part of it.
Okay.
Let's see.
All right, that's how it started.
right. So the teachers are, in fact, adults. Only they're employed.
Yeah, all right.
Catalyst with pretension.
Was that-
Paychecks. Well, I don't know, I got lots of protections, not much for paychecks.
Well, you're doing it
In
wrong.
other words, when SEED was started with the board, was it started as part of the public school? Had they have
It was
some
a-
sort of,
It was a summer program,
and they agreed to this
and
program?
then they agreed to make it a full youth program.
Are there any questions people have here apart from Joanne's that we can deal, because the idea was to try and get everybody up to speed, not that we
I'd like to know what it is the ministry is looking to do, how they would prefer Catalyst to be used, and what restrictions they'd like to place on Catalyst.
Don't they just want to wipe them out?
I think it's the board, and I think it's what we've heard is it's the liability aspects of it, and I think that it's important to hear the principal explain that, what the concerns are, because I think the TDSB, the question is the TDSB asking for these things, or is he doing it preemptively, thinking that they're going to ask, and is he giving things away so ahead of them being asked for?
Like I have some memos he sent around that are just garbage, right? They're self-contradictory, sort of backfilling, whatever. There's nothing in here that actually says, here's what I'd like you to change, and here's what I think is wrong. And there's a whole bunch of stuff about not using teachers to sub for janitors during strikes, but or student parents to sub for janitors during strikes, but nothing about what he'd actually like to see changed.
Now, what my question is, are the teachers ahead of us in that, do you know what he wants to change? Is that why you were saying
Well, the
that we
general
don't need to ask
indication
them?
would be that to bring it in line with College of Teachers Education Act and board policy. Certainly, no person other than the teacher can provide evaluation for students, and no person unsupervised can give instruction. So there'd have to be, I guess it could be supervision, like supervised unit with no evaluation would be the extent of what a volunteer could do under those arrangements. That's a drift of it.
is the general interpretation and practice of supervision to mean that a volunteer presents a curriculum plan, the teacher oversees it, and then supervises it to the extent that they discuss with the volunteer how it's going? Or is this on?
Sounded more like in-class presence of the teacher while the volunteer teaches a particular module or
So
unit.
supervising
not
the
a whole
prisoner
course.
sense, not the professional sense.
That's right.
To the level of maybe not even having a student in the art room unless there's a teacher present.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty, like it's even down to eradicating individual studies.
Wow.
The whole notion of students teaching each other and being able to learn by themselves without somebody up there at the front hierarchically giving it to them that's what's at threat.
So maybe what we should just do is look at the questions that we have, see if we want to ask any one of them or in any order. What is the board's position? Nobody knows that, right? Do you have a question? Do you have this?
Yeah.
do here, and then we work out the specifics amongst ourselves. I think there are a number of things that can be said about how the program runs now. So anyone who has questions concerning how the Captain's program runs now, we could get that cleared up now, rather than have to deal with that later on, when we'll take away from the issue, which is why we're here.
Maybe I could just run through the process we use now. We currently, students or teachers seek out catalysts, or the catalysts come to us. And what happens at that point is they have to meet with the teacher they'd be working with and see whether that would work out and what credit they offer and what kind of course they'd be offering. Then they're also presented to either the general meeting or the staff meeting for approval. Then they fill out a form indicating what they will teach and their qualifications. The form is signed by the supervising teacher, myself, the coordinator, and then is sent to the principal for their signature. So we have that kind of approval. And then during the year, there is an informal level of supervision that goes on between the teacher and the supervising teacher and the catalyst, depending on what the catalyst needs, etc. They may even hand out, like I hand out a form in advance that lays out some guidelines. And so there's pretty constant communication about what's going on in the course from those courses. And so that's the selection, approval, and supervision that we've currently got.
Is Tim aware of that process?
So Tim signs every single
But is he aware of all those steps?
It's
that
in
you
our
just
handbook
said?
and has been in our handbook.
But I think that should get explained today. I don't.
So Laura, he says that in reviewing the seed handbook, it seems that for the most part, Tim does, seems for the most part the current policy is acceptable. So the policy we have in the seed handbook, which an official letter written by Tim, is acceptable.
So why are we going to problem? So no, but I'm serious. Why are we here?
There's a big but, though. The but is, but it must be brought into line with current practice. And that's the but that we're going to hear.
What's the current practice?
Sorry?
What's the but? What's after the but?
The but will be all the regulations that it does.
Just as they're called volunteers, they can do
Well,
a
they'll be-
unit. The teacher would be in the room. They wouldn't do any marking themselves.
Well,
That's
Well, those are the buts.
seems to be.
Can I jump in with the devil's advocate part, like the liability things? Liability in terms of student safety, unsupervised by a teacher. We do represent you in local practice where we stand in the place of the parents. Perhaps I'll draw out the worst case scenarios, people questioning the validity of the credits later on, and whether anybody's education is valid or not. So those kind of issues will come out. So, but this is about worst case scenario, and in some ways that's an administrator's job to look out for these. So that's what's going to be presented.
Okay.
The conspiracy theorist in me is wondering if this has anything to do with Harrison's proposal of using volunteers in the classroom, and if he's just playing on the defensive on behalf of parents.
That's what we mentioned at the meeting last Wednesday, which was that it is a real problem because one of the ways to get rid of teachers and make them do more work for less is to have volunteers come in. And this is a very specific and different program. But it is difficult because as someone who's trying to defend the education system we have and as it's structured, it's difficult to fit the thin end of the wedge. Someone else said is it going to open the door for private school credits? You know, that if Seed can do this, well then why can't people go and have their, you know, their different religious schools and their this schools and their charter schools, and is there any more public education?
It's not like we're all
Can we
embarking on.
appoint a chair? I think there's a lot of people who are raising their hands and wanting to recognize.
Yes.
Sort of jump.
But the angel's advocate position of this is, in 30 years, have any of the credits been denied? Has any student been denied access to university? I mean, 7 years ago, every single Seed student who ever applied to university had been accepted. It might have changed in the last 7 years, but it was a pretty good record for the first 22 or so. Has there ever been in the history of the Ministry of Education a liability issue that revolved around having volunteers and loco parentis, right? It's one thing to project worst case scenario, but if you're going to project it all the way, then we should be taking, you know, biohazard 4 containment in case Ebola breaks out, and be living in meteor shelters. I mean, you really have to address realistic liability, not someone's, you know, paranoid fantasy of liability.
Lindy, was that your hand?
I was just going to say, does Tim know, like, have you spoken to any of the students who are actually taking Catalyst courses? Like, how did my courses this year, when I wasn't on course with you, if I didn't have them, you know, like, they're very important. So does he know the kinds of things that we learn in Catalyst?
So should we ask him if he has any questions about the
Maybe
program?
just have the students speak to him about, like, what they have experienced in the Catalyst program, because, I mean, that's what it's all about, right? So it just seems very important.
The students, we did have a version of this questionnaire that we filled out, and they're in that box over there on the piano. So, or we have the, so we do have that already, and that's largely a student perspective about.
Can you read it?
Basically, 18 people filled it out. Out of the 18, 17 had taken Catalyst courses this year. One hadn't. There's a lot of comments on what they thought of or what they think it adds to Seed. Do you want me to read a few, or?
Yeah.
Okay, there's lots. They're essential to Seed. They offer opportunities not available other places. They add great dynamics. They offer more courses. Cultural influence essentially on higher teachers. Knowledge gets credits in a different way. Variety, challenge, knowledge, different approaches, enrichment, contacts the outside world, bigger selection, real life experience, a lot.
Yeah.
And also, I come straight from university a lot of the time. Like, my chemistry catalyst was in university, so she knows exactly what's going on in the chemistry world, and she was able to teach us things that, you know, a regular teacher might not have even been able to do. So sometimes they're almost better.
The early history of the Catalyst program is full of things like U of T students sneaking in Seed students to the computer labs at U of T back before personal computers, when there were 2 computers in Toronto and one of them belonged to U of T, and Seed students getting better access to computational resource than anyone else in the entire school system because of access to Catalyst.
Yeah, we used the U of T lab this year.
Yeah.
And out of that, 11 would make complete their
Right. I think the question is what's going to, you know, what will happen if it doesn't, if we have to do what he suggests, will be have a school function, will it be school next year? Would it affect next year?
Yeah.
Sure.
Harold, this is, he wants us to decide.
They're arriving when?
They're arriving in 5 minutes.
Okay, just a question about, just to be aware that they're not expecting this group. They were expecting staff and maybe a few parents. They may not be. And so I think that we should be careful about overwhelming them. and I like, is it Robin? The idea of a problem-solving approach, like what can you see? The Catalyst program is very important to us. How are you going to help us to preserve it? And so remember that the surprise factor.
Yeah.
False alarm again.
No, it's not.
I flew back from San Francisco for this.
Yeah, so come on.
So if we